Good evening, John coming to you. Going to talk to you tonight about a concept that I am calling boot camp to bank, but it would also apply for anybody just starting out. Right now, lots of kids are graduating from high school, many more are graduating from college. They're all about 18, 19, 22, 23 years old. And I'm going to use the example of boot camp graduates because a young man, his family and I are friends. I watched this guy grow up, and he just graduated Marine Corps boot camp, and he got meritoriously promoted. And I'm going to show, using him as an example, how a little bit of money put to work every single month can turn into a whole lot of money. Even if you are just out of boot camp, you're what in the military we call an E nothing. You're just starting your first time job and working and not making a lot of money. So you don't start out putting a whole lot of money away, but you can become a millionaire, almost guaranteed, because of concepts like time value of money and compound interest. And you hear me talk about those a lot, right? Speaking of that, background, John Alford, I have two YouTube channels. This one is going to go up on both of them. One is Diffusing Financial Danger, just starting to build that one. The main one is John's Music and Money page. There's a lot of financial literacy content already on that page. There's a whole playlist of it. There's some music. That's why it's Music and Money. It used to be a motorcycles page. So, if you want to take a look at that, watch this video. If you like this content, you find it useful, find it educational, go over there. There's a lot more like it. There's actually some that goes much more into depth on the concepts I'm going to talk about, specifically how compound interest works, how the time value of money works. I'm going to talk about those a little bit in this video, but I'm not going to really spend a lot of time explaining that. So let's jump right in. Just getting started out, you're not making a whole lot of money, but especially in the military, you have a lot of benefits. First off, you get allowances if you don't eat on base. If you eat on base, you can go to the galley or the chow hall or the DFAC, whatever your service calls it, and eat for free, right? I mean, during those hours, and it's kind of weird because the evening hours end pretty early for many of us. But let's just get it right out there. A E2 in the Navy or the E2 in the services, because this young man is a Marine and he did well enough at boot camp that he got meritoriously promoted to E2. So he's not been in, more than 3 or 4 months. He's an E2, so he's an E2 basic, 0 years of service. His base pay is $2,599 a month. So again, not a ton of money. You're not meant to stay in E1 or E2 that long anyway, so it's not, they're not paying you career type money. But again, his medical's taken care of, his birthing, his housing is taken care of, his food is taken care of, at least in those 3 meals a day at the chow hall. So let's go from there, right? Now, there are a couple assumptions I made on how his pay is going to increase over his time in the service, in the Marines in his case. I did get him promoted, but actually, when I compared it to some Google searches, his promotions come fairly early at first and actually are a little bit behind what the service is promoting to senior grades right now. So I didn't make him promote crazy fast. That was one assumption. I did build in the annual cost of living raise that the military gets at 3%, but only 3%. And I didn't put in any bonuses or any special pays. So I built this completely on the base pay table from today, based on rank and years of service, with that COLA of 3% built into my spreadsheet. I'm not going to show you the spreadsheet. It's just a wall of numbers, like any spreadsheet is, right? But but I did that. And then I said, okay, if you're going to be in the military, because the tax situation when you're serving the military, to me, it makes sense to put your money in Roth TSP. But you don't have to. It's going to grow the same way, whether it's in the Roth TSP or the regular TSP. You might already be asking, John, we know you're talking to military, and hopefully military folks are watching, but I've already thrown an acronym at you, haven't I? TSP. That's Thrift Savings Plan. That's the military's version of a 401k. Okay? So think 401k when you hear me say TSP, if you're applying this as someone who is working their first full time job, but not in the military. But if you have a 401k, you may have the same option, a Roth 401k and a pre tax 401k. If your tax situation is favorable and you're not paying much in income tax, I'd encourage you to use the Roth option because then you pay taxes now and you never pay taxes again. So he puts the money, he puts 5% into his TSP. There's a reason for that 5%. First, it's a good discipline habit to get started with. It's affordable because it's only, I mean, what's 5% of $2,600? Like $130 a month, right? It's not a whole lot. It's not gonna, you know, after he does it a couple months, he's not even going to notice, and it doesn't have a whole lot of expenses. 3 months ago, he was working part-time jobs, or he was like right now, all the kids graduating high school, they've never made $2,600 in a month, or probably haven't, and now they're making 2,600. So we take 130 and we put it into TSP. That works out to about $1,560 a year, right? So that goes in. Now the average, and we're just going to use average here. I'm not trying to predict the market. I don't have a securities license, so I can't really tell you how to invest your TSP. But especially for a young man like this guy, he could probably put 50% in what's called the C fund, which is common stock, and 50% in the S fund, which I believe is like a small cap stock. I'm not saying that's the mix you should use, but it's the one I use just to make this example work so I can make the spreadsheet. Well, the average return over the last like 10 or 20 years for those two accounts, if you average them, it would be 7.5%. One's doing about 7.1, one does about 8. So I just use 7.5 as an average return. Sometimes the market does way better than that, and sometimes the market obviously goes down. We had a down year in 2022, for example. 2023, 2024, we had up years. So I built this spreadsheet, and just for sake of this illustration, I show him doing a career in the Marines and making it to Master Gunnery Sergeant or E9 the last few years before he retires. As he stays in, he contributes 5% and never raises it. Never stops contributing, but never raises it. So obviously, as he gets more years of service, he gets seniority raises, and as he gets promoted, but he never contributes more than 5%. Currently in the military, you get what's called the blended retirement system. And in the blended retirement system, after their second year of service, they begin getting a match into their TSP, like a lot of private sector employees get in their 401ks. In the current setup for military blended retirement system, if you contribute 5% to your TSP, you get a 4% match. Now that goes into the regular pre-tax TSP, just like your most matches in a 401k at work go in pre-tax. Because think about it, that's money that your company's putting in, you never see it. And if I had to pay taxes on that, it would be like, well, that's coming out of my other pay. And it might discourage people from putting enough in to get that full match, which we recommend. So he gets the 5%. And after 2 years of service, he starts getting a 4% match, which means by that third year of service, he's putting just over 2,000 in. And the Marine Corps or DOD is putting in just over 1,600. So we're not talking a huge amount of money. We're talking $3,600, but we're going to take advantage of the time value of money and compounding. So he continues to do this. While he's doing that, I recommend he does something that we call a tax-free retirement plan. Some people call it a self-completing retirement plan. It also is part of the be your own bank concept. So let's be practical for a minute. The money that this young man is putting in TSP and all of his peers that are 18 and 19 years old goes into IRS jail for their retirement. The purpose of that is to put this in for retirement. But that IRS jail says, hey, guy, thank you for serving your country. Thank you for working. Thank you for saving and investing for your retirement. But it's in IRS jail. You can't touch it until the year you turn 59 and a half, or you're going to have to pay a 10% penalty to get your own money. Well, he's 19. I was standing there talking to him yesterday at church, Sunday morning, saying, you have no idea what 59 and a half is, but you're looking at it because I turned 59 this year. 59 and a half is actually in 2 months and a few days for me, right? I didn't think I was going to get here either. I mean, I hope to live this long. I love life and I'm glad I'm alive. But when I was 19 and in college and you had talked to me about 59 and a half, I'd have looked at you like he looked at me, right? So I recommend putting another $150 a month. It's what we call the $5 a day plan into one of these self-completing retirement programs. Why I call it that is it has a feature that if as he builds his money, if something should happen to him, his family gets a larger sum of money. You might be guessing what vehicle that is. That's not the purpose of this video. The other thing that happens is as he builds value in there, he can use it in the be your own bank concept. I don't have a video on that yet. Other people make good videos on be your own bank. But that way, he grows a pool of money that he can access before he's 59 and a half for whatever reason. One of my cousins used his plan like this to pay for his daughter's weddings. Another friend used it to buy livestock. He became a bison rancher and he needed one more bison for his starter herd, and he used his. And it was money from TSP actually that he took out of TSP because it was a special tax category. He could do this. He took it out of TSP, put it into one of these be your own bank accounts, and later took money out to buy a bison. That's wild. It was great helping with that. We call and talk about it all the time. So he now has three accounts growing after that second year. His Roth TSP, his Match TSP, and his Be Your Own Bank tax-free account. Now, I did do one thing. He started at $5 a day in the sixth year. So now he's been in the military a while. He's gotten some promotions. I upped it to $200 a month. I didn't go crazy. And that account, one of the great things about the Be Your Own Bank account, it can be built to be flexible so that if he wants to put extra money in there, he gets a bonus, he gets, an early promotion and he wants to pump more money in there. Those are flexible, but I never made it more than $200 a month. So think about it for a second. He's putting in 5% of his pay, and every time he gets a pay raise, a little bit more comes out, but he gets more in his pocket too. And he's putting in $5 a day or $200 a month when he bumps it up after 5 years. Notice I have never had him putting in like $5,000 or $10,000 a month. Some people do that, but by starting early, that's why this video is boot camp to bank. By starting early, he harnesses the power of the time value of money and compound interest. There are years as this rolls out that he'll make more in compound interest in these accounts than he did his first couple years in the Marine Corps. That's the power of compounding interest. Because now I want to talk to you about some of the numbers, right? I'm staying in easy mode. I was going to make up some slides or maybe get my drawing board, but I just decided to go ahead and get this video made. So let's fast forward. My friend does a full career in the Marine Corps. He could get out and replicate this with his private sector 401k, with the match. He could still contribute, or he could put all of this money in his own program, his Be Your Own Bank account. Again, it has that flexibility to add more to it as time goes on. But let's say he does the career. He does 20 years in the Marine Corps, qualifies for retirement. How much would he have in these accounts? And he's only 39 years old. He actually turned 19 right before he graduated from boot camp. So this is perfect, right? 19 years old, boot camp to bank. He retires from the Marines or the other services. If we're talking to an Air Force guy or a Space Force or even Coast Guardsmen have this resource. After those 20 years, again, he's only been putting 5%. His Roth TSP account, growing at 7.5%, is worth $156,000. The match, so money that DOD has been putting in there that he never had to mess with, is worth $114,000, almost $114,500. And then his Be Your Own Bank account is worth about $75,000 because again, he's never put in more than $2,400 a year. Where these others, their years he's putting in almost $12,000 in TSP. Now, for sake of simplicity of this video tonight, I'm not taking into account his retirement pay. I'm not taking into account if he gets a VA disability, like many of us do when we leave the military. I'm not taking into account any future earnings and what those do in 401ks. I wanted this video to purely show boot camp to bank. So at this point, he has, let's see, 100 and 270. He has almost 300. He has $345,000. I'm going to let that sink in for a second. Remember where we are today with this young man. He just finished boot camp. He's putting in, well, I know how much he's putting in, but let's say he's putting in 5% into his TSP, and we sit down and we start a Be Your Own bank account at $5 a day. So 5%, that $130 out of his paycheck to TSP, $150 out of his paycheck to his Be Your Own bank account. We start this with $280 a month. And 20 years in the future, he could have $345,000. That is the power of the time value of money and compound interest. Did I do that when I was 24 years old and I first got introduced to these concepts? No. I've done some of it, and you can see behind me the house we live in. We're doing well. I'll admit it. But just imagine where any of us would be that are now older if we had known this. If I could get in a time machine and go back to 24-year-old John or 22-year-old John and just said, hey, give me $280, shut up, just do it. Because I had the money and I could have done it. I did some things. I have some accounts going. But that's the other thing is you see the house behind me, the yard behind me. I'm not even talking about using his VA loan, building equity in houses like many of us do. I did buy a house bought a townhome about that time. That's one reason I stopped investing in my IRA is I had to stretch to pay. This is going to make you laugh. I got a $114,000 mortgage, and it was stretching me to pay for it. I had to get a roommate. Then later I got married, so I got more housing allowance. But he could do the same thing. But I'm not talking about the night. I'm just talking about 5% into TSP and the $5 a day time value of money plan. So he has 345. But let's say, just for the sake of this argument, he takes those accounts. He keeps paying the $200 a month into his Be Your Own bank account. He just lets his TSP and his Roth TSP and his match TSP just ride. They stay in TSP. There's some options there. I think I even have a video, my podcast video with Samuel Howell from the Alliance Group. I talk about an option with TSP that protects it from market. But for simplicity's sake, let's just say at that point, he just leaves it on autopilot. The $200 is going into his Be Your Own bank account. The TSP accounts, he just logs in once a quarter, once a year, and checks on them. Let's fast forward until this young man is 60 years old. We're not looking at other 401ks. We're not looking at other investments. We're not looking at rental real estate or his home equity. This is simply what he built from boot camp to getting out, retiring. And it could work the same way if he had started a civilian career. When he turns 60, now I don't know about you, but again, 60 is next year for me. I have no intent to retire at 60. First off, I like what I do. I get paid well for what I do. I like doing these videos and helping people with their finances. I'll probably do this the rest of my life. Hopefully it's not next year. Hopefully it's like 20 years from now or 30 years from now. But with these accounts, when he turns 60 or another young sailor, Marine, soldier, I have a friend, his daughter just graduated boot camp and her MOS school as well. She could do this too, right? The Roth TSP could be worth, if it compounds at 7.5% average, it'll be worth just under like $12 under $714,000. He never put in more than 5% and he hasn't added to it since he retired. But the compounding turns that $156,000 that he had when he retired into $713 over those next 21 years. That's the power of compound interest and the power of starting small now. It's just like a tree, right? When you first plant a tree, they're this big or maybe this big. And then you have one in your front yard that is huge, right? And you have to have it trimmed back because the tree is now so big, a little bit of growth each year is a lot of growth. So that's what's happened to his Roth TSP. He has $714,000 or could have 714,000 in there. In the match, the money that was just from DOD, because he was part of the blended retirement system, it's now grown to over $500,000. I'm looking at the spreadsheet. It's 522,608. So let's just call that $500,000. Or we take the 22 and add it to the 713. He has almost $750,000 in one account and $500,000 in another account. And his Be Your Own Bank account that he's been contributing $200 a month to, never a huge amount. And this is growing at a smaller rate because that account is regulated and I can only use a certain percentage matter. But my account for the last 2 years has beaten the percentage that I did this illustration with. Okay. But I have to be conservative. It's just one of the rules. So it could grow to more than this, but it's grown to almost 363,000. So his total, starting from 5%, I know I keep saying this, but that's the point. Starting at 5% of E2 pay and $5 a day in two separate accounts, his Be Your Own Bank account is up to 363,000. He has a total of just under, I mean, like $54 under. If he was 60 right now, of course I'd be way old. But if he was 60 and I was sitting right here, I'd hand him $54 because that would mean he would have $1.6 million. Is that E2 boot camp to bank? I think so, right? That is talking about starting with $280 a month and just letting the time value of money with a modest interest rate. Notice I never went over 8% talking about interest rates tonight. What if he does better? What if he does better early, right? It's called the sequence of returns. It's a whole separate concept. I love it. It's not money 101 like we teach. It's more into economics. But the sequence of returns, like if he got really good returns early, that money would, the nest egg would grow. And then even if it dropped back to getting that 7.5%, it's gotten a little boost, right? That happened to a lot of us in the 90s. But I didn't do that with him. I never put in bonuses. We didn't look at home equity. So he's worth 1.6 from something that he could start. Anybody finishing boot camp, any ensign or second lieutenant that's just gotten commissioned from the academies or is about to get commissioned, anybody starting their first job after high school, or a young man, another friend our pastor, he already has businesses. He's graduating high school a year early. He already has businesses. What if he could take 280 out of his business and put it to work, just like a guy finishing boot camp? This is boot camp to bank. It is a illustration of the power of the time value of money. It's like the old saying, right? Let's look at those trees back there. When was the best time to plant those trees? Well, obviously 2, 3, 4 decades ago, right? This is my wife's grandparents' house. We bought the other heirs out, rebuilt the house. Those trees were there when I met her 30 something years ago, almost 40 years ago now. So, right, we couldn't have a tree like that today if someone hadn't planted it 30, 40 years ago. But if we needed a tree, the next best time to plant it is tonight, right? Or tomorrow, and not wait. So it doesn't matter. Obviously, if you have someone, you're watching this, you saw the boot camp name, or you saw me promoting it, or one of my partners shared it with you. If they're just finishing boot camp, I'm glad to talk about this with them, or have the person that shared the video with you talk with them about maximizing the power of their TSP plus the power of a $5 a day plan, to have that flexibility and access. Because again, these are all 18 and 19 or 22 and 23-year-old military members serving our country, protecting us, keeping our freedoms and liberties together. Let's help them, right? Just imagine, just from stuff he does today, he's on a path to have $1.6 million. Bank. Serious bank. Thank you for listening. I'm going to do some lives. I'm going to do some more financial literacy content, throw up some more music content soon. But everybody, thanks a lot and have a great evening.